Welcome back to Bonanza Disc Golf. Today's gonna kind of be an update video because a few weeks back on Project 100, we had a coaching session with Overthrow Disc Golf all about my forehand. Now I am starting to coach on backhand, so that's gonna be coming really soon, as well as strength and conditioning specifically for disc golf. But today I wanna break down the things that I did that have already given me what I feel is a serviceable forehand, where I'm only gonna focus about 10 to 15% of the rest of my off season on my forehand, perfecting the things that we talk about today, as well as addressing some of the mistakes that we're gonna be talking about. But for a quick reminder, this is the main thing that I talked about with Josh, and that was the fact that I was running up very straight because of some advice that I had heard before, and that was causing me to essentially rip off my arm and use my arm to throw instead of my body and my rotation. So I want to share with you how I fixed that in less than a month, and it's definitely not all the way perfect, but I'm out here in Gainesville, Florida right now, playing where they just had the Chainhawk Open, which Garrett Gerthy took down, and if I would have played in the tournament, the round that I just shot would have been 10-19 rated, and a lot of that was because I had a comfortable and confident forehand. So we're going to go to the first hole where I used it, which used to be way outside of my range. Still kind of is, but I still threw the forehand on it. And I'll explain everything that I did and why. All right, we're actually not gonna go to that hole because there's some people on it right now. But if we looked at my form beforehand, essentially I was starting straight on with the target because of some advice that I had heard. Now I take some steps, crow hop up here. This is my step. So my foot is already pointing forward, and then I would have to reach back behind my body and swing my arm through to throw the disc. Now I do that enough and enough. Josh, the main thing, he's like, I don't care if you have more distance, he said. He just said, I just don't want you to hurt yourself so you can throw longer. And the main thing that fixed this for me was turning to the side before I ran up. Now I already gave this tip in another Project 100 video, so there's gonna be plenty of other new ones, but the main thing here is instead of starting straight on and then moving to the side, because I tried that, and I tried that to incorporate that into my run up, didn't really work. I started from the side here and would start this shuffle step, and then this step, I tried to make sure I planted it almost perpendicular to where I was going. So if I'm going straight at the camera, it's pretty much perpendicular. Not quite, which I'm comfortable with, because the main thing is that my hips are facing this way. They're closed to the target, and then they get to open up towards the target here. And as they open, my trunk rotates around and comes through and snaps the disc through. Now, one other thing that Josh was saying is that you should have this last foot pointed straight at your target, kind of like this. For me, honestly, I don't know if my flexibility is quite there. So that can definitely help me to open up my hips more. But currently, and he said that you don't have to do it, but what I've started to do is instead of that, I'll actually kind of be pointed diagonally. That way when I come through, I'm able to get my hips all the way swung through, and I can rotate forward through. All right, might actually be able to head over to that hole. Oh no, there's a bunch of people, but not on it. Oh, this is actually a pretty good hole here too though. So if you've heard the advice and you've taken the advice, just run up forward and come through, that's good advice. And I even saw a Ryan Sheldon video where he was talking about that, hey, face your target. But then as I watched him actually throw the disc, he always closed his hips and then reopened them and faced the target, which is kind of interesting. But that's definitely one of the major keys, because I've been having to not have to throw my arm out at it because I was coming up behind here and then coming through, and the arm was all lagging. This shoulder has the potential to rip. Whereas now, coming up with this stance, step here, come through, and then as my hips move us forward, my whole arm comes around this way. And this brings me into the second point, which was opening and closing the curtain, because this actually gives you more forehand coil. And I wasn't quite doing that when we watched my last time. I would just come forward and just kind of try to swing my arm at it and rip it at it. I think there's still one thing that I need to work on because of that form that we're gonna get to later. But the second thing that I've really been focusing on is as I'm here, this arm is up. Because if you just do this, just wherever you are, if you just do this, hold your arms up like this, you're gonna feel a coil in the back of your shoulders, because like that's just how muscles work, I guess. And so when you do that, when you open up that coil here, that initiates the arm movement, which should be first initiated by the hips. This was in another Ryan Sheldon video I watched, or probably the same one, where he was talking about the hip to shoulder separation, which is a baseball thing, but the hips going first and firing, and then the shoulders lagging behind, and then you snapping the disc through last with your wrist is a really good way to get some great snap on the disc. So we're just gonna throw pretty simple here. I'll freaking hit a tree because I don't know this course. So now if you were to watch me work on my forehand and the tee pad, and I'm going this way, one thing that you're gonna watch me start to do is as I learn the disc, and we'll talk about disc selection in a second, I'm gonna come up here, just to my hip point, just so that I know where I'm gonna be snapping the disc. One of the things I still haven't worked great at is getting my wrist all the way cocked back so that I get that full snap. And just so that you know when you're snapping your wrist, it shouldn't be this way, not like a pizza. This doesn't have a lot of rotation. Whereas if you make sure that you have this middle finger, if you use my same grip, is going into the rim, then it's gonna be forward like this. And that is so much more range of motion. If you just do that compared to this, you're gonna feel a difference in how much snap you get. And so I'm gonna point my nose angle to where I want my hip point to be, and then come back. I know, hey, this is where I'm ending my throw, boom. And I'm ending my throw forward. So here, ending my throw like that. And that's one of the things that's really helped me to keep my nose angled down. I still miss nose up, both forehand and backhand, but focusing on that nose angle before the throw has really helped me. And then the second part, and the other reason why I throw nose up, which is why that was slightly nose up there, is focusing on following through the hit. That last part is through the hit with your wrist, making sure that the wrist goes to your hip point, which for me right here, nose down. The other point of that, also from a Ryan Sheldon video that I saw that made a lot of sense to me, is instead of trying to go around, try to go through, forward. So this, through, and your elbow shouldn't be leading. That's one of the other things that I struggle with that we're gonna be working on, but your elbow shouldn't be leading. Boom, fall through the disc straight, and then you can pronate. Some people do that. I don't, I'm not good enough yet, but fall through like there, instead of just going around. When you fall through, I'm gonna try to show you without hitting the freaking camera and see if I can even do it correctly. So we're gonna focus on falling through the hit. Oh, that's so good, dude. That's so good. But falling forward and through is a major help to make sure they're actually hitting your nose angle and your lines correctly. Another major point in disc golf, which is super important, is your disc selection. So right here, these are my main two fairway drivers right now that are on the stable side. I have a flippy one as well, but this is a Felon, this is a Birdie Disc Golf Supply Strike. These discs fly very different. I've already thrown all my distance drivers out there, except for my Grace actually. But what's really important for me is as I was doing this, I was learning how these all threw on a flat line, because that'll teach me how much height I have to give them. The more understapled the disc, even if the nose is down, the more height you have to give it so it'll work into that flex line. But right now I'm really only focusing on fairway drivers and distance drivers, because with my distance drivers, I can obviously get the most distance, but this also brings me to on the course decisions. And this is where I struggle a lot, because I can throw these if I throw them really well, 320 feet. I could throw these if I throw them really well, 340, 360. But if I miss on this, it's still gonna go 290 to 320. If I miss on this, it might hyzer out at 250 just because of how much slower the disc is than this. So instead of thinking about it like a backhand, where especially because I have what, like 50 more, 60 more feet of power on my backhand, and I'm throwing distance drivers up to like 420, I'm throwing fairways up to like 380, I'm throwing mids up to like 340, I'm throwing putters up to 300. That nice delineation doesn't really happen with me on my forehand, and that's something I had to learn the hard way, because I kept being like, I know I can throw my Felon 300 and have it reach somewhere on hyzer, and then I would throw my rive and it'd be perfect, and it's because I was throwing so much smoother with my rive, really focusing on smoothness. This brings me into not really focusing on throwing, which is what I'm really not doing anymore. I don't really focus on throwing, but instead I focus on getting through the movement, getting my curtain up, and falling through the hit. One more thing that really helps me that I really struggle with is staying low and over. This is what overthrow talks about, this is what Ryan Sheldon talks about, is you need to give your elbow a path directly at the target. You can't be rounding behind your elbow. And so if I stay high like this, I'm gonna miss a little bit more nose up because my arm has to swing around more. Whereas if you just look at the elbow hinge point, if I get lower, it's straight through and I can snap through the end of the disc. I've seen some people do some crazy things to try to get super low. I haven't really focused on that yet. It's one of the things I'm really gonna start focusing on, is staying a little bit lower and keeping myself down there. But one thing that really helped me with all of this was practicing intentionally and filming. So really focusing on making sure that I get to this hit point, slowing down and going. One thing that's added a little bit of power that I'm not sure if it's legit or not, but I've watched Eric Oakley do it and some other pros, is I've noticed when they get to this last step, they'll kind of check up, boom, and then explode through the throw. Obviously with their hips first. I'm not good at that yet. I still have so much practice to do, but that kind of looks like super low, super high. So that's a really good shot. Let's go. And so honestly, with all of these, I'm really focusing on just throwing smoothly, keeping my nose angle down, and I've been able to hit much more routinely, most of the lines that I want, but also with much easier power, because the easier you're able to throw, the better you're gonna be able to hit any of your lines. I really hope I don't screw myself over here, but we're gonna go through this easy small gap with my Birdie Strike, which since it's a 7-speed and it's neutral, I'm gonna have to put on a little bit of hyzer because of the torque that it's gonna get. Oh my gosh. Go in the basket. That might have actually hit the cage. That was very good. Now, of course, on this channel, I'm not just gonna say that I figured everything out and fixed it, because I can't throw a forehand 400 feet. I wanna be able to, but that comes with a bunch of things that we need to talk about that I need to learn and fix. All right, this was that nice, easy toss with the birdie. I mean, it had to have been so close, and I did not try to throw it hard. This is about 270 feet with that fairway driver on a hyzer flip line, which I'm very not good at. And that leads us into the things that I need to tell you that I'm working on that you can expect to see as I continue progressing. The main throw in disc golf, honestly, is the backhand. That's the thing you have to work on if you want to get really good. The backhand is just a shot that you probably need to develop more than the forehand. And to be honest, every time that I say something like that on this channel, there are always people who are like, well, you want to play at the Pro Tour, so you need X, Y, and Z, and this and this and that. And I'm like, yes, I understand, but you also need to understand you need to allocate your time correctly to the things that are gonna get me there the fastest, and that should get worked on the most. So for me, this off season, it's gonna be 10 to 15% putting, up shots, all of those things. Up shots maybe a little bit more, because I've been struggling with those a little bit lately, especially from standstills. And then maybe 20 to 25% forehand, where I continue to just get reps in with this form, focus on strength, and then the rest just backhand, form, and distance. Because when I hit it right, my backhand is really solid, but I'm not consistent with it and I haven't done a lot of form work. So that's a lot of what we're gonna be focusing on over the next couple weeks in Project 100 and probably for the next couple of months. But here are the main forehand things that I need to work on. The first, I think, is elbow and arm placement. As you're gonna see in all that footage that we already showed, a lot of times, even when I'm down, my elbow tends to be out from my side. I don't know if that's a bad thing. I tend to be a little more out, and I think that that could lead to more elbow strain. The main thing that's gonna keep the elbow strain away is just moving with my torso, because then my elbow isn't really leading, it's my body, and then I just snap through at the end of it. I see a lot of really good pros, the best pros, be really tucked in, and I don't know if that tighter rotation will give me faster rotation and add to my distance. So that's something that I'm gonna be talking with Josh. The second main one, which I already kind of touched on, the one throw that I'm really struggling with still is getting down enough and throwing correctly ANHYZER and nose down. It's one of the hardest throws in backhand as well, but with forehand, getting the correct height, being able to have the elbow high enough, being able to rotate correctly, get the nose angle right. So that's just a shot that flex forehand is really important, but it's very easy to stall because you can just get that nose slightly up and you throw it hard enough, wind is gonna beat at it, gonna stall it, and not gonna go super far, and that could potentially be my farthest flying forehand. So really gonna focus on that. Another piece is gonna be standstills. I'm bad at standstill forehand and backhand. That's something I'm gonna need to work on in this off season. And the last three are kind of simple to go through, but one is I wanna continue working on hyzer flip shots. There's a really helpful in the woods. There are just some fairways that shape for the hyzer flip forehand. That brings me to number two, which is reps. I just need to get onto a field, get into a net, and just continue ironing out my new form with reps, because there are times that I slip back into my old form, and I notice it sometimes when I'm editing my footage, and that's just what's gonna happen with forehand and backhand until I do more reps with the new form. And the last one is gonna lead me into something that we're probably gonna talk about next week, which is strength and flexibility. I just had my first meeting this morning with a coach who's gonna do some programming for me, personal training wise, for lifting, which is for range of motion, for strength, and all of those things I think are a little bit undervalued in disc golf right now, where especially as a small guy, I wanna make sure that I get all my advantages that I possibly can. So I wanna be as fit as possible. I wanna be carrying as little weight that is not for the movement as possible. So I wanna be a little bit leaner, a little more muscular, and that range of motion training is gonna really help me with all those flexibility points, because it's gonna focus on getting me more flexible while also getting me stronger. I'm sure this video was a little bit crazy, but I wanted to just get all the points that I've really been learning and appreciating about getting better at forehand. Hopefully you guys can take some slight things away who are following my journey, because I am seeing lots of improvements as I actually start to focus on these things. And I wanna share with you all the little tips and tricks that help me to even just solidify them in my mind. If they make sense to some of you, but not all of you, like that's okay. Hopefully it helps to some of you who it does help. But if you wanna watch that initial coaching session with Overthrow, check it out right over here. But I'm gonna leave you with one quick forehand that I'm gonna throw first time. But we're gonna throw this rive through that little baby gap to the left. Catch edge. It did go through the gap, but that was that ANHYZER flex shot like I was talking about. This is a work in progress. Okay, love you, bye.